A greeting from the FACTI STB and Yedyni STB teams. Greetings. In the Pokrovsk direction, 73 enemy attacks were repelled over the past day, according to the morning report from the General Staff. It was this direction that accounted for more than a third of all clashes on the front line. The Russians killed 3 residents of Donetsk region yesterday. 6 people were injured. The head of the region, Vadim Felashkin, reported the results of the day in the morning briefing. One of the deceased was from Rai Oleksandrivka, the other 2 were from Kostiantinivka. 3 more city residents were wounded there, while the rest of the victims were in Kindrativka. The Donetsk region prosecutor's office clarified that yesterday at noon, in this village, the occupier struck a minibus used for private transportation with an FPV drone. The vehicle was completely burned out. The driver and his 2 elderly passengers sustained blast injuries, burns and concussions. All 3 were hospitalized. Today and tomorrow, Dnipro has declared a period of mourning for the 3 victims of the Russian attack. On the night of November 8th, an enemy Shahed drone struck a 9-story residential building. The explosion destroyed an entire entrance section. By morning, the number of injured had risen to 13. Among them is a 13-year-old girl. All of them are currently in hospitals. Reporting from the scene is Anastasia Vilkova.
A gaping hole spanning several floors. This is what the building looks like now after being hit by a Russian Shahed drone yesterday. The strike hit at the level of the 5th floor, causing apartments from the 7th down to the 1st to collapse. The search and rescue operation lasted 18 hours. As a result of the strike, 3 people were killed. Among them were the married couple Alexander and Svetlana, who had lived here for over 25 years.
Sasha, Svetlana died, husband and wife. They weren't old yet, just a bit over 50. They were wonderful people. Why did this happen? Why did these people have to die? Our neighbor Serhiy was around here. He said he was walking home in the evening, shook his hand, said, "I'm going home, tomorrow is Saturday, we'll rest."
By the destroyed entrance, Yevyn, a relative of the deceased family, stood all night. Until the very end, he hoped his relatives had survived. But in the morning, rescuers found the body of Svetlana's daughter-in-law in the apartment on the 5th floor.
We recognized her by her necklace.
Yes, she was hard to recognize.
By 6 p.m. on November 8th, the body of the deceased Alexander was found. In total, 13 people were injured during the attack. Among them was a 13-year-old girl. 7 are still in the hospital. Many residents were left out in the open, without belongings or documents. Larissa's apartment was on the 1st floor. Everything above literally collapsed onto her home.
At night there was a loud bang and everything came crashing down. All 5 floors ended up in my apartment. I climbed out through the window, put on a tracksuit, and that was it. Now I'm just in slippers, and that's all I have.
The residents of the building say they didn't even have time to understand what had happened. We heard a whistling sound and then within seconds an explosion.
First, a missile flew swiftly by overhead, and then, almost immediately, the blast. There wasn't even any time. When it hit, there was fire, smoke, soot, everything flew at me. My whole head was covered in glass, everything was glass, I couldn't find anything. I jumped into the hallway and ran out. Now I can't find my cat, it was left in the house.
In the destroyed apartments, rescuers helped search, hoping something had survived among the ashes and concrete debris. They found not only belongings under the rubble, they also pulled out frightened animals. A dog named Michelle, who lived with her family on the 5th floor, ended up all the way on the 2nd after the explosion. And a cat named Kokler.
There was an explosion, she got scared and ran away. I couldn't find her.
At the site of the strike stands a destroyed 9-story building. Currently, there are 72 residents known. The building will be evacuated and 54 apartments will have to be dismantled.
It won't be 2 entrances, but 1.5. In any case, 54 apartments are already set for dismantling for complete destruction. As a territorial community, we will now, for at least 3 months, compensate the cost of renting housing. After that, we will see how things go.
Utility workers are also on site, cleaning up glass and construction debris. In total, more than 1,200 windows have been shattered across the city. About 200 people have already filed reports about property damage. November 9th and 10th have been declared days of mourning in the city. Anastasia Vilkova, Alexander Yurasov, Yedyni STB, United News.
Nearly 70 drones were launched by the enemy at Ukraine last night. As of 9 a.m., Our air defenders had destroyed 34 of them, according to the Air Force. However, they admit that there were also numerous hits recorded. 32 Russian UAVs struck 9 locations across the country. In another location, debris from an enemy drone fell. The head of Odessa region, Ole Kiper, noted that most of the enemy targets heading towards civilian infrastructure and peaceful residents were destroyed by air defense forces over his region. However, the remaining Russian hardware damaged private homes and a gas pipeline. Preliminary reports indicate there were no casualties. Rescuers quickly extinguished the fire. Firefighters also did a good job in Chernihiv region. The head of the regional military administration, Vyacheslav Chaus, noted that last night Russian drones struck one of the region's enterprises. There were several hits. The fire was quickly put out. The day before, the enemy attacked an energy facility in Kryukivka. In total, over the past day, the occupiers shelled the Chernihiv region more than 40 times. Global pressure is needed to force Moscow to stop its nuclear blackmail. This was once again stated by the head of the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Andriy Sibiga. Commenting on the enemy strike on substations supplying the Khmelnytsky and Rivne nuclear power plants on the social network X, Sibiga wrote, I quote, "These were not accidental but well-planned strikes. Russia is deliberately putting Europe's nuclear safety at risk."
We call for an urgent meeting of the IAEA Board of Governors to respond to these unacceptable risks. We also call on all states that value nuclear safety, especially China and India, to demand that Russia stop its reckless attacks on nuclear energy, which risk leading to a catastrophic incident.
More than 2,500 flights, both domestic and international, have been cancelled in the US due to the shutdown. In recent days, more than 10,000 flights have also been delayed. This is because airlines have been instructed to reduce the volume of flights during the federal government shutdown. And this is happening just as Thanksgiving approaches, which this year falls on November 27th, when the US typically enters one of its busiest travel periods. Earlier this week, the US Federal Aviation Administration announced a reduction in air travel capacity by at least 10% at the country's 40 largest airports, as air traffic controllers who are working without pay during the shutdown have been complaining about exhaustion. Controllers are just a small part of the nearly 1.5 million federal employees who are either working without pay or are being forced to work during the shutdown.
Changing flight schedules, especially at the last minute, can be very inconvenient for everyone. Fortunately, I have a direct flight, and today American Airlines has several flight options. But if I had a layover, there definitely would have been some problems. And not everyone has the ability to deal with that, to spontaneously stay at a hotel and so on.
The work stoppage of American government employees has already lasted 40 days. This shutdown has become the longest in US history. Republicans and Democrats still have not agreed on a bill to fund the government. Over the weekend, senators stayed in Washington to hold bipartisan negotiations. Approximately 1 million residents of the Philippines in the eastern and northern regions of the country have been ordered to evacuate due to the approaching super typhoon Fenghuang. The wind is blowing at a speed of 185 kilometers per hour, with gusts up to 230. It is breaking trees, and large waves have already begun to flood the coastline. A storm warning has been issued across the country, and in some provinces, the highest 5th level of danger has been declared. The disaster is expected to hit land at full force this evening. The effects of the approaching super typhoon are already being felt across the country, with more than 300 domestic and international flights cancelled. The situation is further complicated by the fact that the Philippines have not yet recovered from the previous typhoon, which claimed more than 200 lives and caused significant destruction before moving toward Vietnam. Devoted on the battlefield, passionate on the football field, a futsal tournament for war veterans and combatants was held in Kyiv. The goal of the competition is not only athletic rivalry, but also to create a platform for communication, mutual support, and helping veterans return to active life. Yevhen Breihar will continue.
Passion, adrenaline, and intense emotions are inseparable parts of a football match when veterans compete against each other. The teams play at full strength. There is no room for weakness here. The players in orange are shown, and just minutes after conceding a goal, they catch their opponents making a mistake, launch a counter-attack, and score a spectacular goal. The teams consist of veterans, active military personnel, and state emergency service rescuers. Each of them has experienced events and trials in service that have left a heavy mark on their psycho-emotional well-being. Tournaments like these bring positive emotions back into their lives.
Our team is focused on rehabilitation after rotations. The guys often go to the front lines, and after each new rotation, when the team gets together, the guys feel better. Communication before the match, after the match, and training sessions all have a very positive impact on the development of servicemen.
Among other things, such events help improve the cohesion of fighters who continue to serve, says Ivan.
Thank you for the opportunity we have right now to organize such tournaments, thanks to our defenders who are protecting us now and making this possible here. We also come here to recover, to recharge with positive energy, with fighting spirit. This is important for us.
The Futsal tournament is part of the annual cycle of competitions, including adaptive ones organized by the National University of Physical Education as part of the Veterans Rehabilitation Project. Before allowing participants to compete, each of them is examined by a team: professional rehabilitation specialists, therapists, and coaches.
We have a research center, a strong sports infrastructure, and experienced coaches. And for us, according to a comprehensive plan, rehabilitation is provided for military personnel, the wounded, and those who have already been demobilized. And one of the elements of this process is holding competitions. This year they are being held in 8 different sports.
An important aspect of such tournaments, the winners do not step onto the podium because here everyone is a champion. That's why every participant receives prizes and, most importantly, a vibrant mood.
Competitions are just one element. Unfortunately, sometimes people try to solve veterans' problems solely through competitions. Competitions last only one day, but this process should take months and sometimes even years. That's why we take this very seriously. We understand that for each participant, the competition is a small test of their physical abilities.
Next year, there will be more opportunities for veterans rehabilitation. The National University of Physical Education has already started planning a new center where 400 servicemen in need of treatment will be able to receive care every day. Yevhen Brayhar, Oleksiy Yevchenko, the program Vikna STB United News.